Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of our higher education podcast series as part of the work we do at Diversity and Ability. As you can see from everyone's background, all of my guests today are from Diversity and Ability, which is the disabled-led social enterprise. You can find out more about us on our website, which we'll put a link to in the description. Today, we'll be focusing on assistive technology and asking ourselves the question of what are the barriers to assistive technology, what is it, and is it time that we rename assistive technology? Today, we have Meghan, Charlie, and Brian. Meghan, would you kindly introduce yourself, please?
Hi, I'm Meghan. I'm the Training and Innovations Lead at Diversity and Ability, as Piers has already said. My role is really about doing everything we can possible to make organisations, universities and different people that we work with as inclusive and accessible as possible, and to really get them excited about diversity and celebrating difference. So what that looks like is I tend to spend most of my time making resources or videos and trialling new different technologies, new assistive technologies, and delivering training sessions.
Next up, we have Brian.
My name is Brian Lutchmiah. I work for DNA. I'm the HE Partnerships and Inclusion Lead and work with this wonderful team who are being introduced today. I'm also currently chair of the National Association of Disability Practitioners, which focuses on supporting specialist practitioners working in student services and particularly delivering services to disabled students. And I'm also chair of the Link European Network, which is working with 6 partner countries alongside the UK to focus on universal design for learning. Now, all of those roles do encompass aspects of assistive software and assistive technology. It's an important part of everything that happens in the sector, and most importantly for disabled students in terms of engaging directly with their course of study. I've got about 20 years of experience working in education, and that's probably the reason why I've got very little hair. Back to you, Piers.
Last but very much not least, we have Charlie. Charlie, go ahead and introduce yourself, please.
Thank you, Piers. Yes, a bit less experience than Brian, I suppose. I just kind of started in the education realm, but in DNA, I manage our higher education partnerships with universities, trying to basically instill some of the sort of values that Meghan mentioned when she did her introduction. But primarily in this talk today, I'll be looking at one of the projects we ran at Imperial College London, and sort of the takeaways that we gained from that.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. So we'll just jump straight to our first question. And the first question is to you, Meghan. As someone who has been a part of creating and delivering so many great resources on assistive technology, what in your experience is assistive technology and how valuable is it for everyone?
I think that's a really great question, and one that might take me the whole length of the video to answer, so I will try and be as concise as possible. Essentially, what is assistive technology? This could be answered in a couple of ways. And if I was thinking about where I was when I was at university, before I really understood what assistive technology could be and got the knowledge that I've got now, I would have told you assistive technology is specific tools that are for disabled people that can mean that we can access different things. It might be a video meeting or mean that we can access our computers. But now, with my much more kind of developed, I suppose, understanding of what assistive technology actually is, I would probably just read you a list of apps that are on my phone. So assistive technology really is any product or any equipment or software or tool that supports people to participate, that removes barriers and ultimately assists or enables someone to do what they need to do. And that could be as simple as me saying, I really fancy going to my local coffee shop, but I'm not sure how actually I should get there. So what I would do is I would open my phone, I'd click on Google Maps or any other map software, and I would then type in the name of the coffee shop. And that there has enabled me or assisted me to do what I need to do. So now, when I think about assistive technology, it's really any app or any tool or any piece of equipment that will get me to a space where I can do what I need to be able to do and hopefully do it relatively well. So why is assistive technology so valuable, I guess, was the other part of that question. Well, it's valuable because for me, it meant that I could actually sit in this meeting that I can understand what's being said. I'm using assistive technology at the moment. I'm using the captioning feature. I'm using a screen reader on one side of my screen, and my whole screen is tinted so I can read different elements of the text. But it also is valuable from the perspective of just being able to interact on a daily basis. If you have ever seen one of my unedited emails or texts, you will see that my spelling is really not quite brilliant. And that means that you probably wouldn't be able to understand what I meant if I was just to text you. But what assistive technology means is that actually when I do send you a text or an email, hopefully, and maybe Piers, you can attest to this, that it might be at least a little bit more understandable because I've used a tool like Grammarly or like a built-in text-to-speech or speech correction tool that means that actually you can understand what I'm saying. So for me, it's just about being able to do what I need to do on a daily basis.
Thank you so much, and it is so valuable, and it took me a couple of years into university to realise how valuable it was, and take up the technology that I'd been provided with and use the free stuff that I could find on the App Store. Google Maps now has a wheelchair function on it so that you can just click it and it'll show you step-free routes, which was so helpful when I lived in North Wales, where there's hills and steps just in the middle of nowhere for no apparent reason. On to our next question, which will be over to you, Brian. We've talked about how valuable it is and what assistive technology is. But as someone with such an extensive history with a disability professional background, what do you think some of the barriers are for assistive technology take-up? And what do you think we can do potentially to address them?
Yeah, it's a very good question. Technology is part and parcel of everyday modern life now. I think we can all attest to that, and particularly in the past year with the recent pandemic, I think there's been much more of a reliance and understanding and knowledge around the use of technology, and in particular assistive technology, with the added component of students being taught in remote environments rather than face-to-face in a campus environment, and that has altered the teaching and learning experience from a student perspective. If we're transposing that into kind of the disabled student journey in terms of engaging with study, and my background, one of the things I didn't mention earlier is that I had a background in managing student services for a university, so I've got some detailed knowledge of the experience directly of professionals and also of the experiences of disabled students. We know that nationally there is a low take-up in assistive software and technology training as part of the disabled students allowance. Now, there could be a variety of factors that are associated with that. Some of the responses when I've had conversations directly with students have included things such as, I know how to use my computer, I know how to use the software, I don't think I need that, I haven't used anything or needed anything like that before, why would I need that now? Now, there's a reflection on perhaps how that is handled in an assessment conversation, and also getting students to really think about the forthcoming 3 years of their study and the varying degrees of development that they will have and will need as part of that academic growth. There's also a focus on the training aspect, which is much more about the quality of the delivery, the quality of the information that disabled students have access to, the quality of support that they have in getting used to the software that they've been issued in such a way that they can integrate it quite normally into their everyday academic routine. And I think that's really important, where using bits of software, using the technology in a way that actually provides a level playing field for students to engage with their study is and tends to be the net result when used successfully. Another factor that we recognise in and across the sector that is requiring focus is around the use of terminology. And some of the terminologies and languages that are used when talking about disability or inclusivity may be slightly different. They'll mean the same thing, but they might have a slightly different aspect to them. So there's this whole core line in between, which is about actually what works best for the student. And what will work best for the student is standardizing an approach.
Every student and every department in a university all use technology. under different names, and under different job titles, and under different application processes. Even if you apply for DSA, it can all be a bit confusing, particularly with that terminology aspect. And from my own experience, that is very true. Often assistive technology would sit under IT, the information technology department, but the information technology department are more about fixing your computer and fixing the software rather than helping you use that software to access learning material. And then on the complete opposite side, the lecturers would be like, well, you've got access to the software, so it's all good, right? Not realizing that the content has to be accessible, and the training has to be embedded in that pedagogy. Part of your background, Charlie, been addressing that sort of issue of, assistive technology training or, study tools training and all of these things that Meghan's mentioned in the resources and guides she's created shouldn't really sit under IT or in a weird part of library services. And so my question to you is, you've recently presented to the AHEAD conference highlighting a particular case study in Imperial College London, I believe. Are you able to give us a brief intro and insight into that and what the main takeaways of that, real life case study was?
Yeah, happily. And what it does quite nicely is it gives context to the aspect that Brian was talking about there, and how that kind of ethos can be practiced in the real world. So yeah, a bit of background, I suppose. I think one of the first things people think about when they have this idea of assistive technology university is how do I access it and what is the cost involved in that? Now, luckily in the UK, we have the disabled students allowance, which Brian has alluded to. So if you go through the DSA process and you have a diagnosis, you can access funds, which gives you access to assistive technology. That's all well and good, but the question is, what if I don't have a diagnosis? What if I can't access the DSA for that reason, or because I'm an international student? And Imperial College, if you look at their statistics on international students, it's quite high. I can't remember the exact number, but it's one of the highest, I think, in the UK. So because of that, you've got a whole proportion of their student population that can't access the DSA, but still might need the assistive technology and everything that comes from it, as Meghan alluded to in her answer. So what Imperial did is they said, right, well, we want to make sure we have the funds to sort of back us up. We want to make sure that any student at the college can access the technology, the study tools, when they need it. They don't have to go through long processes. They don't have to fill out various forms. They could just have it instantly, either on their own laptop, computer, or out on site in the labs and in the library. The question is, though, what assistive technology will be most beneficial to Imperial students? Each university has their own kind of specialisms, and Imperial, especially, it's the STEM subject, which sort of saying, okay, which programs, which softwares will really benefit our students in the way they study, which is where we came in. So we looked at their courses, we looked at how they teach those courses, and recommended them a package of assistive technology they could provide to all their students. Again, all great. A university with resources to do this and the capacity to do this. But then the problem, I suppose, becomes, and this stems from their marketing team actually sort of approaching us and saying, well, it was called assistive technology in the sector, but will students know what that is? Will they really get an idea of how beneficial it can be to them, or will they just associate it with a disability that some might say they don't have? We sort of sent this problem our way, and we sort of said, well, okay, there's a lot to unpick there, but let's just see for this project what happens if we kind of rename it and change the approach a little bit. So for the project, we called it inclusive technology. We left it like that. And we're now on the third year of the project. And in that project, not only have we recommended packages, but we've provided training on them through this inclusive technology study schools for all approach. And one of the statistics that we pulled from this and we found quite interesting was that for the project, obviously, the only people accessing assistive technology would have been disabled students, whereas now we saw in the college that it was sort of 66% of non-disabled students were accessing the software, kind of suggesting to me that narrative around who can access it was broken down to some degree. And we'd hope to say that it's become more of a campus-wide initiative. So you've got two aspects there that we sort of hope we broke down. One is this physical access to it through resources that can be funneled in the right way, then also how you kind of market it and sell it to students who may not have heard of assistive technology before, and indeed associate it with how it can benefit them in their course. So again, we didn't go out in the project to, I suppose, measure how changing language and what we call it impacts on take-up, but it was quite a nice kind of third year result that we found coming from it, which I suppose has led to this kind of discussion we're having now, is how can that be reflected sector-wide in terms of terminology being uniform.
Thank you. I think that stat in particular about, beforehand it was 100% of disclosed disabled students. We know, I know personally, and I'm sure quite a few of the people here today have had that do I disclose, don't I disclose issue, particularly if you're an international student and you have to look at the visa restrictions to do with disability and medical exemptions. It's do I disclose, don't I disclose? And just renaming it and knowing that your audience might have that barrier to inclusive technology or study tools for all, and seeing 2/3 of the respondents and take up being non-disclosed or non-disabled students is such a poignant statistic for that third year, particularly when you didn't go out of your way to be studying this. It was just a byproduct of trying to make an inclusive service. It is just one of those ones which is about, to a certain extent, addressing differences in terminology, but also supporting people so they don't have to disclose and don't have to publicly declare or out themselves, as it sometimes feels like. So thank you so much for all three of your answers. I've got a little bit of a follow-up question for you all. And we're not here today to answer the question, should we rename it? We want to leave that up to you, the audience. But I always like to leave everyone that's listening with something they can do tomorrow, something they can, finish listening, can just fix. If you could give one bit of advice to do with assistive technology, whether it was renaming, standardizing, reiterating something you mentioned that you think is really important, what would it be and why do you think that's important? Go with you, Charlie.
Good question. My key takeaway would be any new type of software, any new platform that you use can be very intimidating when you start using it. There are lots of tutorials and resources online at the moment. Often, if you are a student or even if you are just someone working in a company, don't be afraid to sort of ask for help and I'm really struggling with this software, or I've got a lot of questions about this software. Can you help? Do you know who can help me? Because having that kind of one-to-one time with someone who really knows how to use the software is so beneficial, and you can save yourself hours going through the internet trying to read various guides. You can crunch that down in just a 5-minute chat, some pointing in the right direction. So that would be my main takeaway. Try and ask for any kind of help. Don't power through and think you know what to do and waste your time.
Brilliant. Thank you. Brian?
So I've written down 2 words. These 2 words I think are extremely important, not only to universities and professional services delivering support, but also wider sector. The 2 words also have a great deal of meaning, in particular for each and every student. The first word is retention. The second word is achievement. Now, when we talk about inclusion, we should be talking about inclusion as a whole aspect. So it's inclusive of every single student, every member of staff that delivers the pedagogy in such a way that it enables students to reach their desired outcome. And so those 2 words, I think, are very important to health check in terms of why am I here? Why am I being asked to take up my AT training? Why do I need that? Actually, the answer to that is it aids both ongoing retention and also aids that direct link into achieving the outcome you have arrived at university for.
Ask you, Meghan, the final question. So for you, what would you think is, that take-home message and, why?
I've had some great answers from Charlie and Brian, so I feel like there's not much left for me to say, but I'm going to give you an action to go and try and do. Head over to the Diversity and Ability website, have a look on the resources page and choose a piece of assistive technology from there that you've not yet seen or heard much about before. Download it. Most of them are free. Many of them are open source or have free trials if they aren't free. Download it, try it out, and let us know what you think.
So true and valuable. And all you have to do as well is we've got that little cool filter function as well. So you can just tick free and assistive technology and you'll get all of the free assistive technology stuff. So if you don't want to pay anything as well, they're all nice and easy to search. To everyone listening and to my guests in particular, I just want to say a massive thank you. All of the resources on our page are written and curated and delivered by those of us at Diversity and Ability and some guests as well that we usually have, centering our lived experiences and centering our understanding of how disability impacts us, how we express ourselves in society and how we access society. So I can only reiterate what Meghan's point was to take away, and as well as the amazing things that Charlie and Brian have covered today. So just before we finish, I'll leave you with the question: is it time to rename assistive technology? Thanks.